Okay, so let's have a look at installing Dbvisit standby version 8 on the ODA machine. In this environment, I've got an ODA machine called just ODA S1, which is the primary system, and that's the top two terminals that you're seeing. And at the bottom, it's on ODA 2, which is just named ODA S2, and you've got the bottom two machines. So if we just have a look and see what databases is running on this at the moment, we can see list databases. On the primary, we can see that we've got our Dbv8, which is just a sample database that we've created that we will use now for Dbvisit standby version 8 to do a test, and it's a CDB, just so that we can see how that works. And it's using ACFS for storage. So if we just have a quick look at the storage for this database, we can do list db storages for ODA CLI, and we can see the storage DB storages that's configured. And if we look at that specific database, we can do ODA CLI describe DB storage -i for that specific ID that we want to show, and we can now see what's the specific storage that was created for this database. And it's important to keep this in mind, because what we want to do is before we create the standby database, which is on an ODA or ODA, we will need to create the DB storage so that that's pre-allocated for it. And then once that's created, we can then install the software. So, but before we get to that, let's install Dbvisit standby version 8, and then we'll come back to this and we'll configure the storage. Now the software is downloaded onto both my machines into a temporary folder called 8.0, and if we go in there, we can see we've got the version 8.08 there. And what we're going to do is we're quickly going to go through an installation, and we're going to install it into user Dbvisit. So if we do an ls-ald user Dbvisit 8, we can see that the directory exists and it owns by the Oracle user. And if we now do the same on the standby system, we can see that the directory is there as well. And we can go into the temporary folder where our software is installed. So let's start the installation. So what we're going to do is first unzip the install package, which will create a tar archive, which we will then extract. So tar xf. And once that's extracted, we'll see a few folders, for example, the Dbvisit folder, and the installers underneath that. So we go Dbvisit installer, and in there we will see the install Dbvisit executable. So we're going to run the installation as we normally would for version 8. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to install the central console onto the standby system. So we're actually going to install the central console onto the second ODA machine and not the first one. So let's start the installer. It will ask me what's the base location that we're going to install into, which is user Dbvisit 8, and that directory was pre-created with the Oracle user that's the owner. It asks me then which components I want to install. So first I want to do an installation. I'm going to install the core components, which is Dbvisit standby core, which is the command line interface, dbvinet, and the agent. And I press enter, and it then asks me for the dbvinet component, what is the source machine, which is ODA S1. I'm happy with the default. I press enter. I'm going to keep the dbvinet ports at the default, which is 7890. I'm accepting that, and then it asks me for the target, the remote system, which will be ODA S2. And it will then ask me for the port number, which I'm going to leave at the same at 7890. I press enter, then asks me what's the passphrase that we're going to use. Now in this case, I'm just going to keep it simple and just make it Kiwi123. Now if we continue, it gives us a summary of what we just entered. We press enter and it moves on to the agent. It then asks us what's the host name that the agent will use, which is ODA S1. I'm happy with the default, with also the port number 7891. And then it asks me for the agent passphrase, and I'm just going to use Kiwi123. I enter that, and I'm happy with the summary, and I press enter. It will then start the installation of these three components, which is first the command line interface, then dbvinet, and then the agent. And you just press enter as you go through the steps. You'll then be displayed a summary screen which will show you the components that's installed. We're done with the installation now. That was quick and easy, so I just exit that, and I can now navigate through to user Dbvisit 8. I'm just going to do a tree structure, so you can see just the directory structure. You can see there's a dbv agent, dbvnet standby with all the subdirectories and everything. So what we're going to do first is start the agent in dbvnet so that we know our primary system is ready for use. So I'm going to go into the dbvnet folder and just do dbvnet -d start, and I'm then going to navigate into the agent folder, and I'm going to do dbv agent -d start. And once this is running, I can now do ps-if, let's just get that right. And I can do that just searching for anything with dbv in it, and I can see my dbvnet and agent is running now. So now my primary system is ready, it's installed, I've got the agent running, I've got dbvnet running, the command line interface is running, so we're ready now. So we're going on to the standby system. And on the standby ODA machine, we install Dbvisit standby the same way. So I'm just going to go and streamline it a little bit. So, and then tar xf tar, and that will extract the zip file. It will then untar it, and then it has the Dbvisit installer directory in there. And I'm going to start the installer. Press enter, and again the same concept as before. It asks me for the base location, which is user Dbvisit 8. Then gives me the install option. So I want to install software, and I pick the first option, which is the core components, and I'm quickly going to go through that. It asks me for dbvnet for the local system, which is the ODA S2 system. I'm happy with that and press enter. It then asks me for the port number, which is 7890. I'm happy with that. Then it asks me for the remote system. Now remember, I'm now on the standby, so I want to give it the primary system details, which is ODA S1. I press enter. I then confirm the port number 7890, and then the dbvnet passphrase, which is used to establish secure communication between the two systems, is just kiwi123 in this example. I then press enter with a summary screen, then ask me for the agent. I'm happy that it's detected the right host name, that it's going to run on the port number 7891 as the default for the agent, and then the passphrase. I type that in, and I get the summary page. I press enter. It then starts the installation through the 3 components, and once we're done with that, it will come back to the summary screen, and we can see what's the installer version versus what is installed. Now I'm going to install the dbv server component as well, so I click 1 to specify I want to install. I then pick option 5 to install dbv server. It asks me the host name that it's going to run on, which is ODAS2, and then the port number, the default is 4433, and I'm going to use the default number, so I'm happy with that, and I press enter. I press enter to continue, and it's done the installation, and I now get the summary screen of all the software installed. Quick and easy way to install Dbvisit Standby version 8. I now navigate through to the directory, and I'm going to quickly start up these components so that we can create a DDC file and start the configuration. So we go Dbvisit 8, which is where it's installed, and if I do a tree -d dot there, we can see the directory structure, and we can see on this system now we've got the agent, dbvnet, dbv server, and standby. So I'm just going to start the components. So I'm going to go dbvnet. I start dbvnet. I then go into dbv agent and start the agent. I then navigate into dbv server, so I can start the web server component. Right. So now if I review the processes running with dbv in the name, we can see that I've got dbvnet, the agent, and dbv server. So that's excellent. So I now have access to this environment, and I can now communicate between the two systems and start the central console.